everyone, happy Easter. So glad you joined us this weekend. And if you're new to the journey, a big welcome to you. So glad you're with us. And as we get ready to go into the message today, seeing those images a moment ago reminded me how much I miss us being able to gather to meet in person and how much I'm looking forward to being able to do that again. It will happen, but in the meantime, I'm very glad we're able to gather like this. And I'm thankful for technology and this environment that we get to be in together. So if you haven't yet, take a moment, hit the share button on whatever platform you're watching along with us on today, and let's spread the word. Hope is not canceled. And in the midst of uncertain times, we have an unshakable God, and hope is happening as scheduled right here, right now. Well, during these lockdown times, you might have reached recently a place of desperation if you have kids or parents or roommates when it comes to how to entertain them. And maybe you've even started to turn to some old standbys, like you might have tried hide and seek in your house. What could go wrong, right? And when I was thinking about hide and seek, I thought, there's a game that I have never been good at. It's just something I've never been skilled at. I'm good at the seeking part, but I hate the hiding part. I'm impatient, and I'll find a hiding place and then think, there's gotta be a better one. And so I'm running around while the person is seeking, always get caught. Or if I do find a good hiding place, after a few minutes, I just can't handle the anticipation. I need something to happen. And so when I played hide and seek in the past, I'll just give myself away. I'll come out going, hey, I'm over here. I'm right here. I can't handle it anymore. Too much tension. I need everybody to know where I am. I'm the worst, like the world's worst hide and seek player. And whatever you believe about the whole church thing, I wonder if you've ever felt that way when it comes to God. If you've ever felt like you're doing most of the seeking, he's doing most of the hiding. Another way to put that is, have you asked this question, God, where are you? Maybe you've even asked it this week. You're a student trying to do classes online and you hate it. And you've been asking the question, God, my world's been turned upside down. Where are you? Maybe you work in a hospital and you're worried and tired and stressed out. You have a family member maybe whose test just came back positive and you're wondering, God, where are you? You're used to going to your parents' or grandparents' house. Every Easter it's a tradition, and this year it's not gonna happen. You're wondering, God, where are you? Maybe you had to close your business and lay people off, or you just filed for unemployment. You don't know how you're gonna pay the bills this month, and you're asking the question, God, where are you? I think a lot of us are asking this right now. We're wondering, God, where in the world are you? And we're not alone. People have wondered that for a long time. We find all kinds of stories in the Bible, all kinds of moments where people are asking that same question. And early on in the Bible, we read that God has this house, a place where he lives, God's house called a temple. You ever drive by a really fancy house and maybe let your mind wander a little bit? You wonder who lives there and what's going on in their world. My wife Susie and I like to do this. We like to drive by really big houses and just kind of wonder, like, who lives in that house? What are they like? And what is life like in that house? If we ring the doorbell, will they let us in to look around? Or would that be weird? And we know the answer to the question, but we just like to let our minds wander. I actually had a chance to stay in a house like that a few weeks ago that was really fancy. In fact, it was so fancy, it had this bathtub, and to fill the bathtub, water came out of the ceiling. Water came from the ceiling to fill the bathtub. From the ceiling, people. I mean, that's bougie. And I wish I had gotten the shelter in place order while I was in that house, to be honest with you, as long as I could have my family with me. But God had this house in the Old Testament of the Bible called a temple. And when people asked where God was, the answer was sometimes, well, he must be there. He must be in his house. And the only problem with God's house was ordinary people couldn't get in. See, in God's house, there were these outside courts outside of his house, kind of like his front yard. And you had to be from a certain family just to step foot in God's front yard. I mean, that's how exclusive it was. And then God's house had these inside courts, like a foyer or a formal living room. You might have a place in your house like that. It's the place you put people when you don't really want them to stay too long. The furniture's a little bit uncomfortable. It's like, hey, you can come in for a few minutes, but we're gonna keep this short. God had these inside courts in his house, and you had to be even more special to come into that place. You had to be not just from a certain family, but from a certain family within that generation or that genealogy. You had to be a priest, really holy, just to get into God's formal living room. And then God's house had this place that was called the most holy place. It was kind of like his man cave. It was his personal space. And there was this veil that separated, this thick curtain that separated God's most holy place from the rest of the house. So even if you got to the outer courts, and even if you got to the inside courts, the formal living room of God's house, you still couldn't really get to where God was. In fact, this veil separated everybody except one guy from the place that God lived. Listen to this. This is how we read about it in the Bible. But only the high priest ever entered the most holy place, and only once a year. Strange, right? So exclusive. Seemed like God was kind of hiding in his house, in that most holy place, and that left everybody asking the question, God, where are you? Especially when they were in need, when they were suffering, they were thinking to themselves, God, if you're hiding in your most holy place, what good does that do for me? I can't get in there. I don't have access to you. I can't get into that special space and receive what you have for me. We're blocked off, we're separated. God, where are you? You ever secretly wondered if maybe you're not good enough to get to God? I think a lot of us feel that way. I've felt that way in the past. Like maybe I'm just not good enough to get close to God. A few years after Susie and I got married, we went to this fancy performance. I set it all up. I took her to this event that had an orchestra and people moving around on stage. I'm sure there's a name for it. I'm a man. I took her to this event and I don't remember all the details, but I know it was fancy. We got dressed up and I'd never been to something like that before, but I knew it was key to walk in with confidence. You ever been in that situation? You're in a new environment, so you just square your shoulders, you walk in with confidence. I walked in like I owned the place. And there were hundreds of people, and I proceeded to lead the way confidently to our seats. And I kept walking closer and closer to the front of this performing arts center, closer and closer to the stage, thinking, man, these seats are better than I thought. Like I didn't pay that much for them, but this really turned out well. And I was also thinking, this is gonna be a good night for Mark Johnston, if you know what I mean. I was like, I did it. I mean, I really hit the ball out of the park. These are great seats. But when we got close to the stage, just a few rows back from the stage, there were other people sitting in our seats. The nerve. And so not wanting to make a scene, I politely leaned over and I informed them. I stood in the row, leaned over, said, hey, I'm so sorry, but I think you have mistakenly taken our seats. And they looked puzzled and they looked at me and they said, no, I don't think so. And I said, yeah, I think you're in the wrong place and these are our seats. And an attendant noticed that we were having this conversation and walked up and she asked me, she said, sir, can I see your tickets? And she looked at my tickets and then she looked at me with kind of a compassionate expression, some pity. And she said, sir, these seats are in the mezzanine. Now, at first I was bummed, but then I thought to myself, the mezzanine? Well, that sounds even fancier. Maybe those seats are even better. And so I asked the attendant, where's that? Where's the mezzanine? I mean, that sounds great. And she said, well, you just walk all the way back to where you came from, to the main entrance, and you take the elevator to the 3rd floor. And I began to think to myself, maybe this is not gonna be such a good night for Mark Johnston. You ever felt that way with God? Like he's on stage and you're sitting in the nosebleeds. And maybe all the religious people got all the good seats, got all the close seats, and you know you can't afford those tickets. If you're even qualified to get into his show at all, you kind of think, I sort of snuck in, but now I've got to be so far away from the action. I just can't get close to God. He's in his holy place, and he's certainly not paying attention to all the people in the mezzanine. So this is what we do. We look at God, and then we look at what we're struggling with, and we think there's no way God cares about me. There's no way from all that distance away. I'm separated from him. I don't have access. There's no way he cares about what's going on in my life. I'm in the cheap seats, man. Like I just can't get close to God. Only the high priest could go in that most holy place. Only once a year. It was exclusive. It was restrictive. There was a veil between people and God. Nobody could get in there. And it left us asking, God, where are you for me? Where are you when I need you now? I can't wait a year. I can't send someone else in my place. I can't wait another day. I need you more than ever, and I can't afford any better tickets than these. God, where are you? And so people started to ask that a lot. Again, especially when they were suffering. Like a guy in the Bible who went through hell on earth. In fact, his name has become synonymous with pain. He went through his own personal pandemic, and it leveled him emotionally, physically, financially, spiritually. And in the middle of it, he said this, if only I knew where to find God. I've come to the realization God's what I need, but I don't know where to find him. And I feel that. You probably do as well. Where is God? Have you thought that? Have you asked that question? Have you wondered, God, where are you? In the middle of all of this, in the middle of everything I'm facing, everything I'm trying to fight my way through, all the fear, all the paranoia, all the uncertainty, all the emptiness, God, where are you? And this goes on for a long time. God seemingly staying in his house, people driving by, wondering what he's like, if he cares, trying to get the nerve up to ring the doorbell. And then one day, after this has gone on for hundreds, thousands of years, Jesus shows up. And Jesus doesn't just arrive on the scene for 33 minutes and put on a show and then leave. No, he's born here. He becomes one of us. He hangs out on this planet for 33 years. He makes his home among us. And here's what we read about Jesus. That Jesus went around doing good and healing all who were oppressed by the devil, for God was with him. That sounds good, doesn't it? That sounds a lot better than God just staying in his most holy place. I mean, that changes the game. The billionaire leaves the mansion. The performer comes down off the stage. The founder of the universe is now strolling up and down our streets, grabbing a flat white at the same Starbucks that we go to. Actually, he's serving the coffee to people, and he's starting with the people who can't afford it and have no right to drink it in the first place. Jesus comes and he changes the game. He shows up on the scene. God has left his most holy place. But let's be honest. If Jesus just came and did some good for people there and then in Mideastern towns 2,000 years ago, what good does that do us? I mean, what does that really mean to us here? And now when we're asking the question right here, right now, God, where are you? What does Jesus coming really mean to us? Well, we'll get there, I promise. But first, here's part of why Jesus came. He came to remind us that we as human beings, you and me, we were not the first ones to actually ask the where are you question. God was. See, in the beginning, God created humans and he placed us right up close with him. But then those humans sinned, which means we chose our own way. We decided, I'm gonna do my own thing. I'm not gonna do God's thing for my life, but I'm gonna do my thing for my life. And they sinned and they passed that sin on to us. We didn't ask them to, but they did. So the truth is, God didn't leave us. We left him. And in the very beginning, nobody asked God, where are you? Because he was right there. But then sin came, and surrounded by God's best for them, the first human beings chose the one thing that wasn't God's best for them. And if we're honest, we've been doing that ever since. And then as if that were not enough, not only did they choose what wasn't God's best for them, not only did they sin, but then they hid from God. And we've been doing that ever since as well. And they kind of accused God of being the one in hiding, but it was them. So God came looking for them. He didn't leave them in their sin. He didn't leave them in their shame. He came looking for them. He came seeking them. And what does God ask when he comes looking for those first two human beings who chose their way over his way? Then the Lord God called, wait for it, where are you? Now, hold on a minute. I thought that was our question to God. You mean it started as God's question to us? It started not with God hiding from us, but with us hiding from him. You ever watch two people that you know belong together in a relationship? You know that they should be on the same page, but they're completely misunderstanding each other. And they're just talking in circles around each other and they're not on the same page. And you just want to interrupt them in the middle of all that chaos and say, stop, just if you would only listen to each other, if you would only pay attention, you're acting like you're miles apart, you're missing each other by a mile. But the truth is you belong together and you're really just inches away. What if that's what's happening between you and God right now? What if it seems like in the midst of all your questions, you're missing him by a mile? But the truth is you're really only just inches away. And that brings us back to Jesus. And it brings us back to Easter. See, what it takes in a relationship where two people who belong together are missing each other by a mile is one of those people, one person doing something radical. Completely humbling, totally unexpected, shockingly generous in a friendship between a son and a father, or a mother and a daughter, in a marriage between a husband and a wife. When the relationship gets really strained, what's required for reconciliation is someone has to go first. Someone has to take the initiative in a big way. They have to lay aside their right to be right, and they have to choose sacrificially to serve the other person. And when that happens, sometimes we're so in awe of what that person has done for us that we soften our hearts, and all of a sudden we get it. We thought we were missing each other by a mile, but we were really just inches away, and we don't want to be at odds anymore. We want what's wrong to be made right. After so many years of people missing him by a mile, God said, let me give that a shot. And so Jesus doesn't just come to Middle Eastern towns 2,000 years ago and do some good things for people there and then. No, he does something far more radical than that. He completely humbles himself. He does something totally unexpected, shockingly generous. He dies. Now, that in and of itself is not that radical, but this is, he dies for us when he doesn't have to. He dies in our place, and right before he dies, here's what Jesus asks. Jesus called out with a loud voice, my God, why have you abandoned me? Does that sound familiar? Do you recognize it? Of course you do. You've asked the same question 1,000 times. God, where are you? Jesus isn't asking just for him. He's asking the question, for us. And then something remarkable happens. The sky darkens. The earth shakes. And not far away from the cross that Jesus is dying on is God's house. Remember God's house? His temple. And in that house, there's that veil, that thick curtain that closes off the most holy place from everyone except the most holy person. And that veil for centuries has been keeping us from God and keeping God from us. Only the high priest could go in there, and only once a year. And Jesus on that cross in one moment dies. He breathes his last breath, and that veil, that curtain is torn in that moment. And not from the bottom up, like we finally figured out where God had been hiding all this time and we found him. No, that curtain, that veil is torn from the top down because God has finally found us. And in that moment, don't you see it? On the cross, Jesus dying for us is God saying, here I am. I can't stand it any longer. I'm right here, grieving on your behalf, hurting for your salvation, dying for your rescue. The cross is God saying, I answered your question, now let's get back to mine. Where are you? I'm right here. Where are you? Look at Jesus on the cross. Look at him. Our sin is on him. Our shame is on him. Our pain is on him. Our fear is on him. COVID-19 is on him. Cancer is on him. Our broken relationships and broken dreams and broken hearts are on him. Our loneliness is on him. Every question that's ever kept us awake at night is on him, and he is carrying it all for us. For this is how God loved the world. He gave his one and only Son so that everyone who believes in him will not perish, but have eternal life. God sent his Son into the world, not to judge the world, but to save the world through him. You thought you had been looking for God, but God has been looking for you. This entire time, he's been looking for you. And the cross is God saying, whenever you ask the question, where are you? This is the answer. I'm right here. This is the real me. Jesus dying on a cross is God saying, this is the real me. It always has been. It's just that there was a veil, there was a curtain. You couldn't get to me, I couldn't get to you. Sin separated us, but I took the initiative. I took care of that. And now every time you ask the question, if you'll look to my Son, if you'll look to the cross, you have the answer. I'm right here. And then as if that wasn't enough, he doesn't just die, but he rises again. I know, right? He doesn't stay on that cross, but he rises from the dead, and he does that for us too. Why? So that every day he can be alive and right here with us in our right now pain and our right now needs, so that every time we ask, God, where are you? We can look at an empty tomb, an empty grave, and know he's right here. Hope isn't canceled this Easter because Jesus is alive. So hope is as close as the name Jesus. He's right here. And that's what gives us the strength to take this journey with him, where we find Jesus by realizing what he has already done to find us. And then we find a few other people we get connected in community with, a group of people that we get honest with, and we take the veil, we take the mask off, we stop hiding. We've learned to stop hiding with God now. We stop hiding with each other, and we ask each other, where are you? How are you doing? What's going on in your life? We get honest with each other. We get freedom in our lives. And then we take the next step and we begin to serve each other and to serve people who are still asking the question, God, where are you? They haven't found hope yet. They haven't found life yet. And so we, like Jesus did for us, give our lives away to share the good news, to make sure everybody has an opportunity. Everyone who's seeking can find Jesus too. Listen, these are uncertain times. There's no sugarcoating it, no hyping our way through it. Platitudes and cliches are not gonna hold us up. Hope that comes out of thin air is no hope at all. But hope that comes from a creator who left his most holy place and became a rescuer, who died and rose again and now lives as our empowerer. That's a solid hope. That's a hope that will not fail. And in the middle of our God, where are you question, for all of us who know Jesus, we have already met the answer. I'm right here, and I'm right here. Hope is as close as the name Jesus. And if you need that reminder this Easter, you have been looking in so many places, trying to find strength, trying to find hope, trying to find help. If you need that reminder that when you look to Jesus, you find out that he's right here and he's right here. If you need that reminder today, need that encouragement right where you are, I wonder if you'd just lift a hand up in an act of surrender. Sitting in your living room or your car, your break room, your bedroom, wherever you're watching. Just lift that hand up and just say, that's me, God. I need to be reminded that because of who Jesus is, I have hope. You're right here. Let me pray for us. Father, we come to you with our hearts full of gratitude today. Recognizing that we need you. And we've asked the question, where are you? Maybe we looked away from Jesus for a moment or a season. We got distracted. We got obsessed with the news of the world around us, obsessed with the crisis that's happening around us. And we took our eyes off the cross, and we took our faith off the reality that you are alive, not just around us, but in us. Today, remind our hearts, you are our hope. Doesn't matter what our circumstances are around us, they don't have the final word. You are right here. And while in thousands of rooms right now, you let God speak to your heart, speak to your mind. I want to speak to those of you watching right now who might not yet have a real relationship with God for yourself. You couldn't say with confidence that you know Jesus Christ personally. And you've always kind of felt like you were sitting in the nosebleeds. You were in the cheap seats and you couldn't get close to God. You've asked the question, God, where are you? Maybe you have a relationship that seems wrecked. Maybe you have an emptiness inside of you that no amount of success can ever fill. Maybe you have a fear that gnaws away at your heart. Maybe you've wondered, what's gonna happen to me? And maybe you just have lived at a distance from God for long enough. Well, here's how everything can change for you. It's very simple. That when you recognize your need for God, it looks like this. Today, when you hear his voice, don't harden your hearts. That's all, it's that simple. Don't harden your heart. Instead, open it up to God. Make room in your life for God. And you do that by putting your faith, your confidence in Jesus. by softening your heart, by knowing, realizing in a moment, because God makes it clear to you that Jesus has already come your way, that he already took the initiative, that he's been shouting into your hiding place, ready or not, here I come. And all you have to do by faith is say, I'm right here. And he says, I am right here. The two of you belong doing life together. And if you want to begin that real relationship with God for yourself right now, I'd love to help you take that step. So right where you are, right where you're watching, I want you to pray, very simple prayer with faith in your heart. You can use my words if it helps you, but pray with faith in your heart and pray this out with your mouth. Jesus, today I look to you. I see that by dying, you've forgiven my sins. That by rising again, you give me power to live for you. I want to be forgiven. I want to be free. So I trust in you right now. And if that's you right where you are, I want to encourage you to do the same thing I mentioned just a moment ago, that if you would say, I'm putting my faith in Jesus today. I'd love for you just to lift a hand in the air right where you're sitting, right where you're standing. Just acknowledge it there. And then I want you to take one more step. I want you to take a moment and fill in that digital Connect card. And let us know you put your faith in Jesus for the first time. And if that's you today, I'm celebrating with you right now. My heart's full of joy because you've taken this step to start a real relationship with God. And I want you to know that we can help you continue to take steps to grow in your faith. And I'd love for you, wherever you are in your spiritual journey, to take a moment and fill in that digital Connect card, because you have an opportunity there to share with us a prayer request that you have. We'd love to be praying with you during this season. If you want to share something God has done in your life, we'd love to celebrate that with you as well. Or if you have a need around COVID-19, everything that we're going through right now, we're here. We'd love to help in any way we can. So let us know on that Connect card. We want to provide you with support and prayer and encouragement, reassurance and hope during this season.